and welcome to the No Hair, All Heart podcast. I am your host, Mookie Spitz, and I am the bald one with no hair. I will be flying solo to speak about some of the affairs of the heart, namely mastering the male multiple orgasm. This podcast is inspired by my June 2020 blog post on Medium. If you haven't already, check me out, Mookie Spitz at medium.com. It is a blogging platform. I have over 430 blog posts to date, of which this male multiple orgasm one has proven to be one of the most popular. Every month or so, I get updates, metrics on people reading my stuff, my new stuff, my old stuff. And far as the old stuff goes, this blog post is consistently percolated up to the top in terms of searches and reads and responses. The topic engenders interest. Sex does sell after all. And my male multiple orgasm blog post is second only in popularity to my sexless marriage blog post. So there you have it. You can choose sexless marriage or male multiple orgasms for a good time on Medium. Now, in all seriousness, this blog post, the male multiple orgasm one, was inspired by a actual technique that I have come to master over the years. And I have had several partners who were amazed, annoyed, turned curious, and a few have even suggested that I share it with the world in some kind of format. Being a writer, being a prolific blogger, it only came natural, so to speak, that I would write this up and post it, and that's what I did back in June of 2020. Fast forward now, and I am podcasting in addition to ranting on TikTok and expanding my multi-channel horizons in terms of creativity and outreach. And I thought that I would describe the technique through the lens of this post for your edification and enjoyment. So, welcome aboard. Allow me for a second to posit a disclaimer. I am in no way, nor do I purport to be, any type of medical, psychological, physical, spiritual professional. I'm a blogger. I'm a TikTok ranter. My background professionally is in marketing and advertising and communications. I wrote a book called Super Santa with my illustrator friend last year. So I'm a creative kind of guy who just likes to share what's on his mind. In this podcast, I will talk about process and procedure of the sexual nature for a man, but also relationship possibilities for couples. And I'm doing this as a rank amateur. So in no way do I want to give the notion that anything I'm recommending is clinically tested, approved, recommended by any kind of professional body, organization, or entity. So take everything you say, everything that I say, with that proverbial grain of salt. You come right out and say whatever you want to say about what I say, but please don't say that I am coming at this, so to speak, from a professional capacity. That's number one. Number two, the goal of this podcast describing this process is not explicitly about mastering the male orgasm. I see doing this as a means to an end for personal, sexual, and emotional satisfaction for a man, but most significantly for that man in his relationships with a partner or partners. And I'll get into more detail about what I mean by that. And another important point that I want to make is that everything I describe in terms of male physiology is applicable to a gay man, a straight man. Ostensibly, it's for a cis man. It is a man born male with a penis. I know we live in confusing times now with woke, anti-woke. We've got a backlash to the backlash. We've got identity politics fighting other politics. I don't want to go there at all, but I do want to tip my hat and other parts, as it were, to acknowledge that this procedure and its relationship to a man and to a man's partner or partners, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, is an important point. We tend to traditionalize, if you will, our conceptions and our models of human sexuality, and with that come incredible biases. And I want to steer clear of that. I want to focus entirely on male biology, male sexual response, male emotional response through this ironically enough asexual agender lens, if that makes sense. So in summary, you could be gay, straight, in between. You got a penis. This is for you and your penis. This is for anyone who is interested in somebody with a penis. I think you get what I mean. So with that said, let's launch, as it were, into what this is all about. Now, the post as it appeared was basically called Mastering the Male Orgasm, a step-by-step guide for couples. And I deliberately oriented it toward couples and not just the guy for the reason that I mentioned. And I opened by saying, and I want to open by saying now too, that what I am espousing is not only possible, but fairly prevalent. Specifically, the idea and the physical and emotional practice of a man being able to ejaculate repeatedly without what's called a refractory period is factually true. I think we all grow up with this notion that that the male of our species is aroused, ejaculates, then becomes detumescent, as it were, and needs a period of refraction until the next go around. What I am getting at here is a man is able to ejaculate multiple times within a single sexual session, as it were, with another person without a refractory period. Now, I cite in the article, and I'm going to cite right now, video examples of this happening. If you go to Pornhub or any of the usual pornography platforms, nowadays everything is free and ubiquitous. I used to have to sneak and grab my father's old Playboy magazines to see anything naughty back in the day. But now our digital native generations have limitless exposure to all sorts of pornography, and that's for a separate discussion. But access some of this limitless pornography and do a little bit of prompting, and you will find examples of men who are able to do the procedure that I am describing here. You will see that they are able to, without any kind of video editing, ejaculate repeatedly within minutes with no refraction with their partner or alone, as it were. Some examples of streamers, as it were, who do this. Yummy Couple. I believe that they have an OnlyFriends and a website. They're called Yummy Couple. YummyCouple.com? I'm not quite sure. But the guy there in that couple seems to be able to do this. And there's another one. I could say the F word, I think, without being explicit in a podcast. So here goes. Fuck Forever. I think it's fuck with the number forever. Once again, an onlyfriends.com kind of situation. You could just type these as keywords in Pornhub or your preferred streaming channel of pornography choice, and you'll be able to see a man doing the things that I am espousing are actually able to get done. So the male multiple orgasm is not a myth. The male multiple orgasm is demonstrated in pornography. I have spoken with other folks who are also able to do it. A friend of a friend who lives in Nicaragua, I believe, I was communicating with him. He saw that I had posted this article on Facebook years ago, and he responded, "Oh yeah, isn't this obvious? Doesn't every guy do this?" And I was like, "No." And he is a gay man in Nicaragua, and he said that he mastered this process on his own, as I have, and he employs it all the time with his boyfriend, husband, and with other lovers. They have an open relationship, and it's integrated seamlessly into his sexual behavior and sexual habits with his husband and multiple partners. So I just want to set the baseline that this is not a myth, that the procedure that I'll go through in a bit is how I arrived at my ability to do this, but it's not unique, and in certain circles is common practice. So just from the start, I want to dispel the notion that I'm talking bullshit and that I'm making this up, and it's just a fiction for clickbait. This is none of the above. My intent here is to describe something that I've discovered, share it with the world, as I already have through this popular article on Medium, and I would love to get your feedback. Do you do this as a man? Have you tried it? And I also very much want to hear back from women and from these sexual partners, male, female, in between, of the men who do this. Because I think sex positivity is a very positive thing, and that takes trust and transparency, openness and honesty, and a willingness and enthusiasm to really go for it and explore. To the benefit not only of the guy who's able to come and come and come over and over again, but as I will reveal and emphasize, that person's partner or partners. It enhances transparency, honesty, and trust. And as you'll see in a second, the biggest benefit of this is it focuses attention away from the male orgasm to the partner. And that, I think, is a great way to formally begin. And I apologize for this extended intro, but I thought it'd be important. And, you could always listen at 1.25 or 1.5 to get to the good stuff. But the good stuff is coming, and I'm going to begin by setting it up into 3 parts, which I'll cover off in succession. Number 1 is know your no-gasm. Second is master your mini-gasm. And the third part is free your full-gasm. Did you see what I did there with the alliteration? I have created these terms. I've not seen them anywhere else. I've created the term, the lexiconography of the male multiple orgasm. You've heard it here first, folks. The no-gasm, the mini-gasm, and the full-gasm. And I'll go into each, respectively, in detail. But the very first one is knowing your no-gasm. It is the baseline for mastering this technique. Now, culturally, men, going back to when we were boys, it's all about coming. It seems to be the pinnacle of the male sexual experience. Culturally, we're trained this way. We're programmed to get off. Now, even in a social Darwinian sense, the ultimate goal of sex is procreation. We need to get our semen into a woman's body so the human race continues. And the apex of that process, that procedure, penetrative sex, so that sperm meets egg, is male ejaculation. You need to penetrate, you need to ejaculate, and then it's pretty much up to 10 million of your best guys to make it. Kind of like the missiles in the Death Star, right? They're away, and all you can do is hope for the best. And there's an entire science behind sperm selection. Actually, sperm fighting through the sperm of other men is an aspect of this as well. So there's this mountain of social Darwinian behavior associated with it, biochemistry to ultimately help ensure that the best sperm is able to impregnate the female, fertilize the female's egg. And once again, it's all about the orgasm, the male orgasm on the male side. Once you can get it in there, you need to explode and get it over with. And in a sense, get out of the way so another man can do it. And in a sense, get out of the way so you can go off, kill something for the tribe, and then die, because after you procreate, you're just a wasted resource. I mean, from a Darwinian point of view, it sounds cynical, but that's our purpose as men. But I digress. We have been conditioned that it's the big O, the orgasm, getting off is what it's all about. And speaking from experience, and I'm sure women, people on the receiving end of that male orgasm, regardless of gender and sexual orientation, you are very much aware that guys, people with a dick, are really focused on that. There is a societal and personal obsession with the male orgasm. And by male orgasm, I mean the traditional male orgasm of just ejaculating completely, and then a refractory period ensues. Guys need to rest. A woman can have an orgasm and then another orgasm and another, and there's nothing to preclude a woman from just orgasming away. There's no recharge, there's no reset biologically for the woman. And the myth has been that men can't do this. Men are stuck, in a sense, biologically, biochemically, with ejaculating and then going through a refractory period. And maybe because of this, it's such a big deal for guys. And I think it's tied in with all sorts of cultural feelings and expectations, but it's all about the big O. You got to get off. The biggest benefit of this process that I am relating to you now is the first prerequisite for being successful at this process, which is shifting focus away from that big orgasm. There's no way you can master the male multiple orgasm without dismissing the orgasm as the primary goal of your sexual experience. This is very, very important. You cannot proceed through this process of mastering the male orgasm until you dispel the notion that your goal as a sexual partner and sexual being is to have that big male orgasm. And you can instantly intimate why this axiom of success, if you will, is integral not only to this process, but to improving relationships between partners. Because if a guy is going into a sexual situation with the ultimate goal of just getting off, then that by nature is a selfish and very self-centered view on what is actually going on here. It's not about a guy getting off, but it's about two people experiencing joy and sharing pleasure and intimacy. So knowing your nogasm has to begin with this idea, a rejection, if you will, that the male orgasm is the goal of a sexual experience for a man. Now, if you can get over that and focus on extending pleasure, then you're ready to rock and roll. And the way you rock and roll is through what sounds like a fairly ascetic process. And this has to do with a process akin to what's in the nomenclature, if you will, edging. Now, look up edging on some of these porn sites, and you'll see what this is if you don't know the term already. I'm sure you do. But it's stimulating a man until he's at the very brink of having a traditional full orgasm. And you build up pressure and you build up pressure to the point where it's almost excruciating. And just before he's taken over the top, you relent. The pressure's released and the orgasm isn't attained, but you've gotten as close as you can possibly get to that release. You edge the man. And usually edging is designed to culminate in that big explosion. You edge and then you release and relent, then you edge and then you release and relent. You edge and then you release and you relent. And then boom! But to know the nogasm is step one of my process here. And that involves not releasing fully at all. So my recommendation in the blog post and my recommendation now, step one of this process is to edge in any which way you can, by yourself, with your partner. Get yourself to the brink of a full traditional orgasm and then stop. Any which way you can build yourself up and any which way you can cut the cord, hit the brakes, do that. And do it over and over until you've pretty much exhausted yourself. And don't have a full orgasm that session. Here is the trick. Part 2 of expectations for men in sexual situations is that full orgasm. That's number 1. And number 2 is that after the refractory period, if you still have energy and your partner's still into it, then you go for it again, and it culminates again in a male orgasm. Get rid of that idea. Edge, release, don't come, and don't come at all. If you can stand it, at least until your next sexual session. Hold it. Become an ascetic. Starve yourself of your orgasm. And what you're doing here is you're building up control. You're controlling your body in terms of the muscles that are necessary to constrict and prevent yourself from ejaculating. And you're controlling yourself emotionally in terms of your expectations of having to fully release. You're doing both. And at first, it might be very, very difficult. You edge and then you release, and you edge and release. And by release, I mean you stop the stimulation so you don't ejaculate. Edge and then release the tension. Edge, release the tension. And you might not be able to hack it. Like you do this once, you go through the ups and downs, as it were. You do it again, and then you just need to let loose. Well, okay, let yourself let loose, but you need to build up. It's kind of like, working out, lifting weights. You start with 20-pound biceps, 25-pound, 30-pound. And in this sense, you build up with time. Edge and release, don't ejaculate. Wait an hour until you fully ejaculate. Then wait 2 hours. Are you able to go through an entire sexual session with your partner, complete with penetrative intercourse, and not fully ejaculate? Your goal is not to ejaculate. Your goal is to be with your partner or be with yourself and edge in one way or another to the point of release, but then you stop and you don't ejaculate. You don't ejaculate for 1 day, for 2 days, for a week. Can you hold it together for a week? Can you have multiple sexual experiences with your partner or partners without allowing yourself to fully release? And the answer, if you want to pass the first step of this process, is yes. Go for a full week with multiple sexual experiences where you get yourself all the way to the brink of having a full orgasm, and then do whatever it takes to get yourself off that cliff, off that ledge, off that top of the roller coaster, as it were, and then chill out. And then finally, set a goal, and a week. Can you do it for 2 weeks? Let loose. And let loose when you choose to, and not when you simply do it or can't control yourself. Once again, you're learning muscle control, but more importantly, you're learning emotional control and emotional goal setting. If the knowing your nogasm process, step 1 of mastering your male orgasm, is successful, what will happen is you will be a master of not having an orgasm, but having what I call a nogasm. You had a nogasm session with your partner. You had several nogasm sessions with your partner. You nogasm for a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks. And what I'm saying here is not something new or hasn't been shared before. I believe meditative experts, Kama Sutra experts espouse basically a man not ejaculating on average more than once a week, once every 2 weeks, waiting weeks between orgasms for all the reasons that I'm describing. It's not about the orgasm, and it's all about concentrating about everything else involved in that sexual experience with yourself, with your partner. Know your no-gasm. So you'll know your no-gasm if you are able to sustain a no-gasm for a week, 2 weeks, and be able to control the moment when you do finally release. So that's part one of mastering the male multiple orgasm. It sounds paradoxical, but it is the absolute foundation for being good at this, and I will explain how and why in a second. Part two of mastering the male orgasm is mastering the mini-gasm. And this works by taking what you've learned with the no-gasm in terms of being edging and then releasing and edging and releasing and edging, all the way to the top of that roller coaster, to the edge of that cliff. You're teetering on the brink between being fully aroused and energized and that moment when it hits you like a lightning bolt between the eyes, when you feel the contractions, and when you have passed that proverbial point of no return with your orgasm. Imagine it like a roller coaster. In the article, I talk about it as a roller coaster. You're creaking up the top, you're being aroused, your face is getting flushed, the blood is rushing, your penis is hard and throbbing, and you're ready to rip. And then the car, if you will, of the roller coaster is clicking to the very top, click, 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 click. It gets to the very top and it's teetering at the top. You feel the beginning of the contractions. And you know that you're just on the brink. Your race car is going into the red. And right when the car of that roller coaster cascades over the very top of that hill, that peak of the roller coaster ride, then it's the point of no return. Gravity takes the car, and then the momentum of the car going over the top, and there's no stopping it. Woo! Down you go. And the roller coaster analogy is a good one too, because you slalom with the spurts of your ejaculation, as it were. You are coming and you're gasping and you're ejaculating and you're squirting. And these are the the hills and the turns engendered by that first tipping point being breached. That point of no return is overcome, and you're over the top and you're going. Now, mastering your mini-gasm focuses on that moment, that instant when you're at the very top of that roller coaster peak or hill. You have a pressure of gravity and momentum ready to take you over the top, but you still have the inertia of the energy that went into getting you there, the mass, if you will, of the car, of the roller coaster. And it's a balancing act between the energy that got you to the top of that peak and the potential energy that's about to be released to send you down that hill. Woo! Now, you need to physically and mentally get to know and master that place at the top of the roller coaster. By physically, it's that edging release point. You've been practicing as the no-gasm. You're already familiar with it thanks to your no-gasm training, because you're able to release that pressure. You're able to turn it off, if you will. You're revved up, and then you're able to chill it out. So you've already mastered, in a sense, pulling that plug just before you go over the top. what's different here is that instead of pulling the plug, so to speak, and really just calming down, you learn to hover and live and thrive at this very chaotic, very intense boundary or singularity between coming and not coming. You are able to feel the muscle contractions in your body, and you are able to control your mental and physical energy so that this balancing act between full release and pulling back is this supercharged state of both of them and neither of them, if that makes sense. So you're just about to come, but you're able to squeeze those muscles and hold it back. Squeeze those muscles and hold it back. And in your mind, wrap your head and your heart around this state, this never, never land between coming and not coming, and play with it a little bit and get yourself closer and closer to the edge. And here's where the magic happens. And here's your first male multiple orgasm. If you're able to live in this never, never land comfortably, if you're able to master your nogasm and then master this nogasmic state of edge release, you will discover that you will find the rail car, if you will, the roller coaster car, kind of going over the top. It's like there might be several cars in the train and the first two go over, but then you hit the brakes. You're able to hit the brakes. And even though a car or two has gone over, the entire car isn't going to go cascading over that peak. And that's when you discover that you actually start to ejaculate a little bit. You release semen from your penis without, you feel a contraction, you feel the beginning of the orgasmic contraction, but you're able to hit the brakes so that the contractions stop in mid-contraction. Here's the blend between the physical and the psychological. Your mind is able to hit the brakes after you start contracting and ejaculating. And if you practice this, the first time you do this, you might be so excited and freaked out that you just let loose and have a full orgasm. But if you revisit this place between the orgasm and non-orgasm and get familiar with it in the way that I'm describing, you will be able to start ejaculating and then hit that brake, pull that cord after you feel the contraction so that the contractions stop before your head and the rest of you literally explodes into a full orgasm. And it's difficult to describe unless you're actually the male experiencing it. But I think I've done the best I can with this visual of the roller coaster and the car over the top. So live in that never, never land space. Learn how to take it over the top until you're actually contracting, until the first few cars are going over. And then learn how to hit the brakes so that you're actually squirting, you are contracting, but you're able to stop the full explosion in your head and explosion in your penis and let completely loose with the car going all the way over the top. And after you have done this a few times and start to play with it and master this boundary, this singularity, you will be able to, because it's familiar territory now, with your partner, with yourself, revisit this place, this mental and physical place at will. So that when you're with your partner and you're excited and you're edging and releasing, so to speak, you take yourself there. He or she or whomever you're with takes you there, and you're able to ejaculate, feel the contractions, but then control it, pull back. And then you're back to where you started. You don't need a refractory period because you didn't have what I'll call in a second a fullgasm. You had a minigasm. And because you had a minigasm, you could have multiple minigasms because you don't need the refractory period. That's the magic of this. So let me summarize real quick. The first part is knowing your no-gasm, which is learning how to edge yourself or have your partner or partners edge you to the point where you're able to hit the brakes and not fully have an orgasm. And even more so, you learn that the orgasm isn't your goal. The goal is the state of edging. Your goal is this sense of enhanced excitement and then release, but release without going over the top of a full orgasm. It's just pressure builds and then pressure relents. And it's not about coming. You don't need to come. You could have a lovely hours long sexual experience with a partner, multiple partners, regardless of whomever you want to be with. And you never have a full orgasm and you're completely satisfied. You are exhausted physically, emotionally, in a good way, because it's not about the full orgasm. It's just about the pressure building and the pressure being released. You love your no-gasm. You embrace your no-gasm. Your goal is to have a no-gasm. And then if you're there, then you're able to get to know that zone between edging and releasing and fully releasing and live there and master it to the point where you feel contractions, you're actually physically squirting your semen, but you haven't come completely. And you don't need a refractory period because, in a sense, the ejaculations, these smaller ejaculations, are a part of your no-gasm plan. Part of your edging is actually coming a little bit because you haven't triggered the full orgasm. You're hovering around it. A few cars are going over the top, but the whole train is still up on the peak, on the hill, and it's not rushing down the course. It's still up there dangling with potential energy. And now the last part of this is feeling your fullgasm. And I've called this its own name. I haven't seen this before either. The fullgasm. And what I mean by the fullgasm is what most folks would just consider a usual orgasm. This is when you feel the contractions, you're beginning to ejaculate, but then it's like, woo! You're the rail car, the roller coaster car is zoomed over the top. The potential energy becomes the actual, and then gravity takes hold, and then woo! You're going up and down the rest of the course over that hill, and point of no return. And you have multiple releases, and you're exhausted, your brain is short-circuited, and then your sexual excitation goes from 100 all the way back down to the teens or lower. Your penis becomes flaccid, and you can still be in the moment intimately with your partner or partners or with whomever, but your erection is gone. You're obviously no longer releasing, and it's going to take you, if you're 18, it'll take you 10 minutes, and if you're 50, it might take you an hour or two or longer to get back in the mood. That's the fullgasm. But what's interesting here, when you look at the fullgasm through the lens of the no-gasm and the minigasm, it becomes its own special thing. So we have turned this idea of the male orgasm on its head, so to speak. Whereas conventionally, it's all about the fullgasm all the time. The fullgasm becomes the exception to the rule. It is a special event. It's an exceptional event when, after mastering the multiple male orgasm, you have a fullgasm. It's like a big deal. It's not like a normal part of or a routine part of your sexual experience. The fullgasm is something special and noteworthy. So if you're able to no-gasm your way into a multi-gasm, then the fullgasm becomes like some big deal. So you could be with your partner or partners and you could have one session or a dozen. You can go one day or 1 week or 1 month without a fullgasm. You are mini-gasming your way to your own bliss and that of your partners without fully coming. And then you can almost make it a treat, an announcement like, hey, baby, I'm coming full out. And that's a special moment with yourself or with others when you allow yourself the indulgence of a complete orgasmic release. And that upends everything. And I think it's incredibly healthy. Because what has happened here? What's happened, as I've mentioned, is we've shifted focus from the orgasm to all the pleasure that surrounds the the orgasm in its traditional sense. And for a man who's busy no-gasming, the attention isn't just on his own penis, but on the body and attention and affection of his partner. It's all about you, baby. It's like, I'm not here to get off, and coming is not my goal, but it's both of our pleasure rising and falling, ebbing and cresting, and we're in it to win it together. And if I'm a good boy, if I treat you right, if I'm attentive to you, then maybe there's a fullgasm in my future. And along the way, you get a bunch of mini-gasms to play with and as physical expressions of my arousal and therefore my desire for you becomes self-evident in my ability and eagerness to ejaculate multiple times and to keep going and not to lose interest because of my biology, but to keep it going on because of the discipline that I've applied to my sex life and to my relationship, my intimate relationship with you. This is incredibly powerful, and it redefines the sexual relationship between people. I really think that women, because either they have trouble orgasming or they're able to orgasm multiple times, the emphasis, in addition to all the other male patriarchal heavy stigmas that have been applied to sexuality and sexual relationships between people. I really think for women it's not so much about that orgasm, but it's about pleasing themselves and their partner because of this prior notion about the female orgasm grounded in biology. And I think we've fucked up, so to speak, on the male side because it's been orgasm focused. Because men, once a guy is up, then usually it's the opposite problem. They just want to shoot and get it over with, and they spend less time focused on the pleasure of their partner than their own dumbass pleasure, which is about getting off as easily and as quickly as possible. And even if a guy has learned the art of the no-gasm, because, teenagers tend to be premature ejaculators. I know I was overexcited, which is topic for another whole funny podcast. But men can control it and hold it for the sake of just extending sexual pleasure, but it's still about the coming. It's still about just that one big release. And what's missing is this intimacy, and what's also missing is this biologically thrilling experience of being able to to experience an orgasm in a mini orgasm form, which is equally, and just from personal experience, equally, if not more pleasurable than the big fullgasm. I mean, don't get me wrong, it feels great to let loose. But honestly, it's about the energy between a couple. And from a man's selfish point of view, it's about being able to ejaculate repeatedly without that refractory period. Arnold Schwarzenegger in his Pumping Iron movie was very, very funny. He's young and he's unabashed, and he described working out in the gym, his muscles just burning with all the stress he put them under, with the multiple repetitions of all the heavy weights. He felt that his muscles, his whole body was coming, and he said it in his kind of funny Austrian accent. I'm in the gym and I'm coming all day. And then he's with partners at night. So I'm coming all night and I'm coming all day, which is very, very kind of funny. And again, unabashed, but true in the sense of that kind of energy and release. But mastering this technique, there's the opportunity to just do that in a sense. Why hold back? Why compromise one's sexual appetite or pleasure? Check, check, check. Cough at 51. Hmm. So, lastly, to summarize, the no-gasm is a way of learning how to hold back from having a traditional orgasm. The mini-gasm is mastering that really tight, delicate space between edging and fully releasing so that you can control what I call the mini-gasm. And the full-gasm becomes its own thing and something that's a special event rather than standard operating procedure for every time that you're intimate with somebody. And the capper on all of this, I want to talk for a second about the Kama Sutra like recommendation that I make at the end of the article, which is, have a full sexual session with your partner. Now, I know many women listening to this are like, I don't want to fuck for 4 hours. What's the good time in that? And I respect that. Many men might feel the same way, which is, I just like to hit it and move on with life. But I feel, and I speak for myself and I speak for other partners, that sex, if done in a sensuous, fun way, can be its own activity. And why limit it to a 10, 20-minute wham bam thank you partner? Just get off and get it on somewhere else in a different way. Why not turn sex into an all-night sensation of from dusk until dawn, where the man is not allowed to have a full gasm until the crack of dawn? And this is practiced in Japanese circles, where you begin lovemaking when the sun goes down and you ride the roller coaster up and down with various types of intimacy and feedback. And it's all about pleasuring each other, take breaks, resume. And if the man can mini-gasm throughout the evening, imagine the pleasure there. And now that we have defined it and put it in this context, imagine having a full gasm when the sun comes up. That kind of kundalini magic. Because now we have a lexicon. Now we have a framework through which to look at sex, sexuality, male biology, intimacy with fresh eyes. Whereas before, the culmination of the male experience was that fullgasm. Now the fullgasm becomes kind of a coda to everything else that happens between a partner. And the minigasm, which before didn't really exist, now becomes its own focal point and milestone expression of a man's excitement within such an intimate sexual situation. And the nogasm becomes synonymous not with an aesthetic lifestyle or not just a fetishy kind of edgy one-off thing to do, but really the foundation of a man relating with another person in a way that maximizes the intimacy and connectivity between people in this kind of setting. So that is my male multiple orgasm step-by-step mastery recommendation. And the link is in the description if you haven't seen it already. And I am very curious what you think. Once again, it's not a myth. I do this. It kind of happened accidentally for me discovering how to do it. I've spoken with other men who have similarly incorporated it into their routine sexual experiences and sex life. And feedback from partners has been generally very positive. There's an appreciation for not focusing on just getting off. There's heightened intimacy. And in all honesty, there's been a little bit of frustration too, which is like, come on, dude. It's like, I don't feel like fucking for 3 hours, okay? Life offers more for us than just floundering around in bed all Sunday. And I get that too. And I'm eager to hear any and all feedback from men who do it, from men who try doing this, from their partners who are into it or upset by it or feel that it's distracting from other aspects of the relationship. But in general, I think this is a healthy way to start talking about male sexuality in a way that not too many people talk about. And again, in line with my disclaimer from the beginning of this podcast, it's not about me being some guru or educating you about sex in any kind of way that's clinically confirmed or professionally mandated. I'm just some guy who wrote a blog post who's sharing experiences, gave it some names, turned it into a bit of a procedure with illustrations from the same guy I wrote Super Santa with on Amazon last year. So check out the blog post. Thank you for listening. And let me know what you think. And if you give it a whirl, let me know how it works for you. Because I am eager to hear, and I'm always eager to learn more about my own sexuality and please others best I can. Because one of the greatest pleasures in life is, of course, sex, sexuality, as long as it's open, honest, transparent, and both partners or whomever partners you're partnering with under whatever circumstances is willing to experiment, be creative, and have fun with. So once again, thank you for listening. This is the No Hair, All Heart podcast. I'm your host, Mookie Spitz, and we'll be covering more goodies like this and welcome your feedback. Thank you so much.